All right, everyone. Israel has now weighed in and effectively said that their goal is going to be to enter Gaza. We're not sure exactly when that ground invasion will take place. Right now, they're just striking everything in the region and somewhat discriminately, although there's more damage to hospitals, and the IDF is claiming that it never deliberately targeted them and did not forewarn several groups to evacuate them. They're claiming that they did in several hospitals there. So, again, we're not exactly sure what happened with this. One reason is if electricity is shut off to all of Gaza and people's phones can't be charged, eventually you get a slower trickling of footage of all of the dead people coming out. You may have noticed a lull in the amount of disturbing footage that you've seen posted with regards to the strikes there, except on the Israeli side when it's a Hamas rocket. There's a reason for this. Israel is now effectively saying it's going to annex a zone within Gaza, which is already a tiny area. They're saying, well, our external security zone, which is a strip around all of Gaza, is on the Israeli side of the border, is no longer defensible. We can no longer do that. Clearly, that's no longer possible. So we're also going to create a buffer zone in Gaza. Now, what exact form this is intending to take is not necessarily entirely clear. I suppose the idea is to have like a no man's land beyond your defended border, so it makes it harder for enemies to actually approach your border. The insinuation is that there will be no further access on the Israeli-Palestinian border at all, calling into question exactly how Gaza is meant to continue existing. There's still an aid caravan there, a limited one that's waiting to get in. The Rafah crossing was bombed by the IDF, I suppose, according to what the Egyptians are saying, so they can't actually get people in or out, and this would take place in Gaza. The problem is that's de facto annexation. If another country is saying, okay, you can't build anything and your people can't physically be in that area, so we're creating a buffer zone, don't get near our border, you have to stay, 200 meters away, or, whatever they design. No buildings, you can't farm there, it's going to be full of landmines, so don't fucking bother plowing the soil. We're salting the earth in there, stay away from our fucking wall, we're tired of this. Okay, well, that's better than ethnic cleansing people, I suppose. You've got several problems. It's de facto annexation. You're effectively saying we now control that land. We're not going to use it for anything, though. We're just saying that you can't either. We are evoking control over a chunk of land in a semi-sovereign territory recognized by some of the nations in the world. Diplomatically tenuous, that's number one. Number two, how is this buffer zone supposed to actually work? Okay, Hamas can no longer more easily paraglide over your border. Supposedly this will, I guess, stop the Palestinian Air Force, which is paragliders. They can still fire mortars. I'm assuming the buffer zone's not going to be miles wide. They're still going to be able to fire rockets, etc., etc. All you've done is push back a limited degree of physical incursion, but if Hamas got together and said, okay, we're going to rally the troops here, and did what they did, in this particular instance, and they rushed the border by the thousands, do you think that narrow buffer zone is going to stop them? Yeah, okay, you can put up monitoring sites, make it harder for them to maybe tunnel under your wall or something. I'm just wondering what the actual goal is, other than asserting hegemony over the Palestinians, which arguably inflames tensions more. You'll make the population density of Gaza even higher, because a chunk of Gaza won't really be Palestine anymore. In fact, why don't you just, here's a better suggestion, ironically enough, would be re-annexation. We're going back on our plan to make Gaza an independent Palestinian territory. It's not capable of remaining stable. There's terrorists everywhere. We regret our decision. We're going to flatten the area and rebuild it, but it's going to be Israeli land. Arguably, that would be better than the alternative that they're suggesting. Yeah, they'd be condemned roundly. Yeah, there would inevitably be an enormous number of civilian casualties. At least afterwards, there is the possibility of a semblance of lasting peace. Whereas Gaza makes the West Bank look nice and safe and secure at the moment. And you've got problems there too. Like with that fucking pizza shop that the IDF decided to bulldoze because they were making fun of one of the dead Jews They got beheaded or whatever. They're vowing to annex Gaza, or part of it. Yeah, that's not going to inflame tensions, by the way, with the other nations in the region. While the Israeli forces are much more sophisticated and have a lot more manpower than Hamas, certainly. What happens if you get attacked by all of your neighbors at once again? I mean, it's not the 60s anymore. There are actually nations in the region that have sophistication now. They're not fighting with a first-generation MiGs anymore, if you know what I'm saying. Some of these nations have quite a bit of firepower, partially because they're scared of you. Or rather, the Israelis would say they use the excuse of the Jew to arm up and stuff. But they do have large militaries, if not necessarily modern gem. Then, pertinent to this, Biden's over in Israel, right? The dude has lost it. Yeah, I wonder why U.S. foreign policy makes no goddamn sense on this particular issue. The only thing Biden did that most of the public supports is, well, we stand with Israel. Okay. You should have just left it at that, shaken Bibi's hand, and gone back to the fucking hotel room, dude, because he almost fell asleep. He's constantly wandering off into mumbling rants where you're not even always sure what he's saying. Some people are saying that Biden realized halfway through the conversation that he was getting perilously close to having to assign blame for the hospital strike. And so he sort of mutters and says, oh, I don't think you did it. I think it was the other guys. And sort of had to compensate for that because he wanders off and doesn't really know what he's talking about. At another point, it almost insinuated that he was choosing whether he liked ISIS or Hamas more. And, of course, you're in Israel at the moment. It was probably good that you said Hamas was worse than ISIS, just for diplomatic purposes, even though I don't know about that. Hamas is pretty brutal. I think that ISIS is the worst that we've seen. Yeah. Now, which one would you rather be captured by? ISIS won't bother to negotiate. They'll just torture you to death. With Hamas, at the very least, there's a possibility you get held for ransom and might survive. I think I'll go with Hamas. Getting beaten several times a day sounds better than getting beaten several times a day and then a week later get immolated. Or, you have your genitals eaten by a hungry goat and die of sepsis sitting in a puddle of your own shit. Which is stuff that ISIS would do. It's almost like they took edgelords that have really, really dark, demented fantasies, and they said, okay, I want you to write a tract for us on different methodologies we can terrify people by torture and death. And it's almost like a couple of internet edgelords that went over to go volunteer for ISIS, wrote some sort of handbook that I don't know exists. Their methods were nuts. Then, Biden effectively urges the Israelis to not invade Gaza, which clearly they're gearing up to do. They're telling you, I mean, they're not being shy about it this time. They're saying, we're going to invade Gaza. It'll just be a while. We're bombing things first. We're softening up the targets, which is what they're doing. The northern Gaza at this point is depopulated, or nearly so, other than Hamas militants digging in. Yes, the IDF's creating plenty of rubble for them to make their makeshift barriers and shit like that. By the way, the second that Israel invades, first thing that happens is they'll light a bunch of tires on fire to try to obscure the battlefield so that air support is harder. This happens in this kind of war. And then Biden says, well, come on, man, show some restraint. The White House immediately said, that's not what Mr. Biden meant. He didn't actually express any skepticism. He is gung-ho for Israel, going in and killing every Palestinian person in there. He's just, he was tired. He didn't understand the question. The translator misspoke. Fire him. It's the translator's fault. That's the sort of thing that Biden routinely does. It's no wonder that this sort of thing is happening because the U.S. clearly is not in currently a leadership mode at all. Because the United States doesn't have a leader. We don't have a commander-in-chief. We have a puppet who is controlled by various special interests, other members of the Politburo, basically, the insiders, the party, the singular, the uniparty. Basically the sort of problem you had in the Soviet Union, because these people are all ineffectual cutthroats that think mainly about how to make themselves more wealthy rather than how to build more wealth in general, because they want a bigger slice of the pie. I don't care if the pie shrinks as long as their slice stays the same. Biden doesn't know what he's doing. The Israelis are basically playing a waiting game, a holding pattern right now. Now they're telling you openly, hey, we're going to annex part of Gaza. Our border is indefensible. Jesus Christ, with the size of Gaza, they're completely indefensible, even if they had a standing military that wasn't a bunch of ragtag Hamas members. I would think that that's a little bit little bit hypocritical there. Well, you know, if you're gung-ho for Israel, you won't notice that. And again, pointing out belatedly here, I'm not Team Israel or Team Palestine. I'm just saying U.S. policy here makes no sense. And the Israelis are effectively telling you that they intend to not just invade, but hold some of that land to create a secure zone, a buffer barrier, a buffer zone. And we're not sure exactly what form that'll take because, of course, first they have to slaughter their way through 30,000, 40,000 people because that's probably about the size of Hamas forces within the region. It's going to be a doozy. And that's about all. Peace out.